Ethan sat at a table in the far corner of the school cafeteria, a place he had claimed as his own sanctuary amid the chaos. The vibrant chatter of students around him felt like a distant echo, muffled and distorted. He could feel their eyes on him, the whispers that floated through the air like daggers aimed directly at his heart. His clothes, frayed at the edges and several sizes too big, only amplified the isolation he felt. They were remnants of a life that once brimmed with affluence and warmth, now serving as a stark reminder of his mother's absence. As he clutched his phone tightly, his fingers hovered over the screen, desperately wishing to connect with the one person who had always understood him. But the messages remained unanswered, and the silence morphed into a heavy blanket that suffocated him. Just one more time, he murmured to himself, pressing the button to send yet another text, the screen lighting up with hope before dimming into disappointment. "Look at that loser still texting his imaginary friend." A voice broke through his thoughts, sharp and mocking. Ethan glanced up, meeting the eyes of Jake, the self-proclaimed king of the seventh grade, flanked by his loyal subjects. Their laughter rang out like a cruel symphony, echoing in Ethan's ears. He felt his cheeks flush with embarrassment as he quickly shoved the phone into his pocket, hoping it would somehow shield him from the ridicule. "Why don't you just go home and cry to your mommy?" Jake sneered, his voice dripping with derision. The laughter that followed twisted like a knife in Ethan's gut. He wanted to retaliate, to fire back with words that would make them recoil, but the weight of sorrow anchored him down. Instead, he remained silent, watching as they reveled in his pain, each chuckle a reminder of his loneliness. The bell rang, signaling the end of lunch, and Ethan gathered his things slowly, feeling the weight of their stares as he walked past them. He could hear their whispers trailing behind him like a taunt, yet he kept his head down, focusing on the flickering fluorescent lights above. As the school day dragged on, Ethan found himself in Ms. Dawson's English class, where the teacher's sharp eyes seemed to slice through his distracted thoughts. He had been trying to focus on the lesson, but the words blurred together, and his mind wandered to the empty space beside him, the spot that once belonged to his mother. "Ethan, are you even paying attention?" Ms. Dawson's voice boomed, pulling him back to reality. The classroom turned its collective gaze towards him, and he felt the heat rise to his face. I'm sorry, Ms. Dawson," he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. "Sorry doesn't cut it in my class," she snapped, crossing her arms over her chest. "If I see you texting again, you'll be expelled, understand?" Ethan nodded, the threat hanging over him like a storm cloud. He tucked his phone away, willing himself to focus. But thoughts of his mother danced in his mind, memories of her soft voice and warm embrace. He could almost hear her laughter, a sound that had become a ghost haunting the corners of his heart. After the final bell rang, Ethan shuffled out of the classroom, the weight of the day heavy on his shoulders. As he stepped outside, the cool air felt like a balm against his flushed skin, but it did little to soothe the ache in his chest. His feet moved on autopilot, leading him toward the cemetery just a few blocks from school. The familiar path was one he had walked countless times before, each step a pilgrimage to the place where his mother rested. When he arrived, he found her grave nestled among the others, a simple stone adorned with fresh flowers that he had brought on his last visit. Kneeling before the grave, he traced the letters of her name with trembling fingers, the weight of his loneliness crashing down on him like a tidal wave. "Mom," he whispered, his voice breaking, "I miss you so much." Tears began to spill down his cheeks, hot and relentless, as he poured out his heart to the only person who could understand. "I don't know what to do. School is terrible, and I feel so lost without you. Please just give me a sign that I'm not alone." The world around him faded away as he sat there, the soft rustle of leaves in the breeze the only sound accompanying his grief. As the sun began to set, casting golden hues across the sky, Ethan felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, his mother was still with him in spirit, guiding him through the darkness. But as the shadows grew longer, so did the weight of his despair. He stood up, brushing the dirt from his jeans, and took one last look at the gravestone. "I'll be back tomorrow," he promised, his voice barely a whisper as he turned to leave. The walk home felt interminable, each step heavy with a mix of sorrow and longing. Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something was waiting for him, lurking just beyond his reach. The world felt like an endless cycle of emptiness and pain, and he longed for a glimpse of light amid the darkness. As he arrived home, the silence greeted him like an old friend, wrapping around him in an embrace that felt both comforting and suffocating. The house, once filled with laughter and warmth, now echoed with memories of what used to be. He dropped his backpack on the floor and wandered into the kitchen, hoping for a taste of familiarity. But the kitchen was just as empty as the rest of the house. The scent of his mother's cooking lingered faintly in the air, a ghostly reminder of dinners shared and stories told. Ethan opened the fridge, staring at the half-eaten leftovers and wilted vegetables, but nothing felt inviting. With a sigh, he turned away, retreating to his room. The walls were adorned with pictures of happier times, family vacations, birthday celebrations, snapshots of a life that felt like a distant memory. He sank onto his bed, the weight of the day crashing down on him once more. As darkness enveloped the room, Ethan pulled out his phone again, scrolling through the photos of his mother. Each picture felt like a dagger to his heart, sharp and piercing. "What would you tell me to do, Mom?" he whispered into the silence, hoping for an answer that would never come. With a heavy heart, he closed his eyes, letting the memories wash over him like a tide of sorrow. The world outside faded away, but the whispers of his classmates lingered in his mind, a constant reminder of the struggle he faced. In that moment, he made a silent vow to himself. He would find a way to move forward, to honor his mother's memory while carving out a place for himself in a world that felt so cruel and unforgiving. But deep down, he knew that the journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, uncertainties, and the lingering question of who he truly was, without the love and guidance of the woman who had shaped his world. Ethan awoke to the shrill sound of his alarm clock blaring beside his bed, the piercing noise cutting through the fog of sleep that clung to him. He blinked against the harsh light streaming through the window, realizing with a jolt that he was late. He scrambled out of bed, his heart racing as he stumbled over the scattered clothes on the floor, remnants of a week spent in despair and confusion. The once tidy room now mirrored the chaos in his mind, filled with memories of his mother that haunted him every waking moment. Rushing to the bathroom, he splashed cold water on his face, desperately trying to shake off the remnants of his dreams where his mother still existed, smiling at him, assuring him that everything would be all right. But reality was a cruel tether, dragging him back to the truth that she was gone. He quickly combed his hair, threw on the first clothes he could find, worn jeans and a faded hoodie that had seen better days, and dashed down the stairs, ignoring the empty kitchen that used to be filled with the scent of pancakes and the sound of his mother humming softly as she cooked. His stomach growled ominously, a reminder that he hadn't eaten breakfast, but he couldn't afford to dwell on it. As he stepped outside, the crisp morning air hit him like a wave, a stark contrast to the warm cocoon of his home. He made his way to school, each step heavy with the weight of his loneliness. The path felt longer than usual, as if the universe conspired to stretch the distance between him and the sanctuary of learning, which had turned into a battleground for taunts and jeers. Upon entering the school, he felt the familiar sting of eyes upon him. A group of boys stood near the lockers, their laughter a sharp knife cutting through the morning calm. Ethan's heart sank as he recognized the sound. A cruel melody played at his expense. "Look, it's the charity case," one of them shouted, a smirk plastered across his face. "What's wrong, Ethan? Did your mom forget to send you to school with a lunch today?" Ethan clenched his fists, his breath hitching in his throat. He could feel the heat rising in his cheeks, a mixture of shame and anger boiling beneath the surface. For a moment, he considered retreating, turning on his heel and hiding in the bathroom until the bell rang. But something shifted within him, a flicker of determination igniting as he took a deep breath and faced them. "Leave me alone," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, but trembling with an underlying strength. The boys paused, momentarily taken aback by his unexpected defiance. "Oh, look, he's trying to stand up for himself," another boy mocked, crossing his arms as if to dismiss Ethan's words. "What's the matter? Did you finally get tired of your mom's ghost haunting you?" The laughter that followed pierced Ethan deeper than any physical blow could have. He turned away, his heart pounding in his chest, feeling smaller than ever. The shame washed over him, a wave of despair threatening to pull him under. He hurried to his first class, his mind racing with thoughts of how he could escape the relentless bullying that shadowed him. The day dragged on, each class a blur of whispers and giggles that only seemed to amplify his isolation. During lunch, he found a lonely table in the corner of the cafeteria, hoping to remain invisible among the throngs of students who swarmed around him. He picked at his food, the cafeteria noise fading into a dull roar as he lost himself in memories of his mother. "Ethan," he could almost hear her voice, soft and reassuring, "you are stronger than you think. Don't let them bring you down." But in that moment, he felt anything but strong. He missed her guidance, the way she always seemed to know when he was struggling. The laughter of his classmates echoed in his ears, a reminder of how far removed he felt from the life he once knew. After school, he made his way back to the cemetery, the familiar path offering a sense of solace that the school never could. The hushed whispers of the trees and the gentle rustle of leaves provided a comforting backdrop as he approached his mother's grave. The sun began to dip below the horizon, casting a golden hue over the headstone, and Ethan sank to the ground beside it, his heart heavy with grief. "Mom," he whispered, tears streaming down his cheeks as he spoke into the quiet. "I don't know what to do. They keep making fun of me, and I feel so lost without you. I wish you were here. I need your guidance." His voice cracked as he spoke, the weight of his sorrow pressing down on him. He could almost feel her presence beside him, a warm embrace in the chill of the evening air. "Please give me a sign," he begged, closing his eyes and wishing for a flicker of hope in the darkness. The silence around him felt deafening, and for a moment he feared he would be swallowed whole by his own despair. Just then, a gentle breeze swept through the cemetery, rustling the leaves above him. It felt like a whisper, a soft caress that brushed against his cheek, and he opened his eyes, searching for any sign that his mother was still watching over him. "Why did you have to leave?" he murmured, his voice thick with sorrow. "I don't know how to face the world without you." As the sun continued to sink, the shadows around him deepened, and Ethan felt an overwhelming sense of vulnerability. He longed for the comfort of her arms, the way she used to hold him and tell him that everything would be all right. But now all he had were echoes of her love and the bitterness of loss. "I'm trying," he whispered, his heart aching. "But it's so hard. I just want to make you proud." With tears streaming down his face, Ethan sat in silence, pouring out his heart to the grave that held his mother's memory. Each word felt like a release, a small step toward healing as he confronted the pain of his reality. He wished for answers, for clarity in the chaos, but all he found was the emptiness that followed him wherever he went. As darkness settled around him, he finally stood up, brushing off the dirt from his jeans. He took one last look at his mother's grave, a mixture of gratitude and longing swelling within him. "I'll try to be strong," he promised, though doubt lingered in his heart. He turned to leave, feeling both lighter and heavier as he slipped back into the world that awaited him outside the cemetery gates. Ethan knelt beside his mother's grave, the sun dipping lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the cemetery. A chill breeze rustled through the trees, whispering secrets he yearned to understand. Today had felt especially heavy, the laughter of his classmates ringing painfully in his ears, a constant reminder of his isolation. As he traced the engravings on the gravestone with trembling fingers, his heart ached with the familiar sting of loss. "Aren't you tired of this?" he murmured to the grave, his voice cracking. "I just wish you were here to tell me what to do." He closed his eyes and envisioned her comforting smile, the way her eyes sparkled when she spoke of dreams and possibilities. But that warmth felt like a distant memory, a fading photograph in the album of his mind. As he began to rise, Ethan noticed a flash of white tucked among the wilting flowers. Curiosity piqued. He leaned closer, his heart racing. He reached out and carefully extracted the envelope, its surface smooth and cool against his palm. His name was scrawled across the front in elegant handwriting, a stark contrast to the chaos of his life. Could this be from his mother? With trembling hands, he tore open the envelope. Inside lay a single sheet of paper, crisp and unblemished, bearing a sense of urgency. The letter began with a warm salutation, but quickly shifted to a more serious tone. "My dear Ethan," it read, If you are reading this, it means I am no longer with you, and I regret that I cannot explain everything in person. There are truths about our family that you deserve to know, truths that may change how you see yourself and your future. Ethan's heart raced as he read on, each word pulling him deeper into a web of revelations. His mother had been part of a wealthy lineage, a name that once commanded respect and admiration, but the letter hinted at a darker history, a scandal that had torn the family apart, leaving his mother estranged and him, the last heir to a fortune he never knew existed. You must understand, the letter continued, that wealth does not define you. It is how you choose to live your life that matters. I hope you find the strength to embrace this legacy, not as a burden, but as a part of who you are. Seek out the truth, Ethan. You may be surprised by what you find. Ethan's mind raced. Wealth? Legacy? For so long, he had felt like a shadow in his own life, a boy defined by his mother's absence and the scorn of his peers. But now the possibility of a different identity tugged at him. He was more than just the boy in ragged clothes. He could be part of something greater. What does this even mean, he whispered to himself, the letter fluttering slightly in the breeze. How do I even start? His thoughts were interrupted by a rustling noise behind him. Turning, he saw a figure approaching, a man in a dark coat, his expression unreadable. Ethan's heart sank. He didn't want to confront anyone right now, especially not someone who might judge him for being here. Are you all right? The man asked, his voice low and steady. Ethan hesitated, unsure how to respond. I'm fine, he finally said, though the tremor in his voice betrayed him. The man stepped closer, his eyes scanning the gravestone before settling on Ethan. This is your mother's grave, isn't it? Elizabeth Sinclair? Ethan nodded, suddenly feeling exposed under the man's gaze. Who are you? I'm a family friend, the man replied, his expression softening. I knew your mother well. She was a remarkable woman. Remarkable? Ethan scoffed, bitterness creeping into his voice. Most people just remember her as the one who ran away from her family. The man sighed, an understanding glimmer in his eyes. That's a part of it, yes. But there's so much more to her story, to your story. You have a legacy that stretches far beyond what you can see right now. Ethan's brow furrowed. What do you mean? The man shifted his weight, glancing around as if ensuring they were alone. I can help you understand. There are answers you've yet to find. It's all tied to what you just discovered. He gestured toward the letter in Ethan's hand. Ethan felt a surge of anger mixed with confusion. Why should I trust you? You're just a stranger. True, the man conceded, but I've seen the consequences of secrets and lies. Your mother tried to shield you from the darkness of our family's past, but it's time you knew the truth. Ethan's heart raced at the prospect. He had always felt like an outsider, a boy lost in the shadows of his family's history. What do you know? He demanded, his voice rising. What's the truth? The man stepped back slightly, hands raised in a placating gesture. Let's not rush things. You need to be ready for what you might uncover. The past can be difficult to face, but it can also be liberating. I don't want to be liberated, Ethan said defiantly, his frustration bubbling over. I just want my mom back. I want her to tell me what to do. The man's expression softened, empathy flooding his eyes. I understand, but you have to confront the reality of your situation. Your mother loved you dearly, and she wanted you to have a choice to embrace your heritage or walk away from it. Ethan felt the weight of those words pressing down on him, a mixture of anger and longing swirling within him. He wanted to scream, to lash out at the man, but he also felt a flicker of hope igniting in his chest. Could he really be part of something more? What do I need to do? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. First, you must accept the truth about your family. Then you can decide how to proceed. I can help you, Ethan, but you have to be willing to face the past. Ethan looked back at his mother's grave, the letter still clutched tightly in his hand. He was standing at a crossroads, the weight of his mother's legacy pressing down on him. Could he really uncover the truth, or would it only shatter the fragile sense of self he had managed to cling to? I'll think about it, he finally replied, his voice steadying, but I need time. The man nodded, respect evident in his gaze. Take all the time you need. When you're ready, the answers will be waiting for you. As the man walked away, Ethan remained by the grave, grappling with the tumult of emotions swirling within him. The letter and the man's words replayed in his mind, a haunting melody that beckoned him to explore a past he had never known. He felt a strange mix of excitement and fear, the kind that comes with standing on the edge of a new beginning. For the first time in a long while, Ethan felt a glimmer of hope. He realized that perhaps his mother's legacy wasn't just a burden, it could be a way to forge his own identity. As he stood there, the sun finally dipped below the horizon, casting a blanket of stars across the sky. With a deep breath, Ethan resolved to uncover the truth about his family, ready to face whatever shadows lingered in the past. Ethan stepped into the local library, the familiar scent of aged paper and polished wood filling his nostrils. It was a sanctuary for him, a place that offered solace amid the chaos of his life. He walked past rows of bookshelves, his heart racing with a mix of anticipation and anxiety. Today, he was on a mission to uncover the truth about his family's past, a past that had been shrouded in mystery until now. He had found the letter from his mother, revealing the existence of a wealthy lineage he had never known, and he could no longer ignore the urge to learn about the legacy that was rightfully his. He headed straight to the history section, where dusty volumes chronicled the stories of those who had come before him. Ethan pulled out a thick book, its spine cracked and pages yellowed with time. As he flipped through the pages, he stumbled upon articles and photographs that depicted a different world, one filled with elegance, grandeur, and social gatherings that his mother had seemingly turned her back on. He felt a twist in his gut, a cocktail of pride and resentment brewing within him. His fingers traced over a photograph of a lavish estate, the kind that would have made his heart race with dreams of belonging. Yet the accompanying text told a tale of scandal and estrangement, as if his family had been cursed. "Excuse me, can I help you with something?" A voice interrupted his thoughts. Ethan turned to find an elderly librarian, her silver hair pulled back into a neat bun, peering curiously at him over her round glasses. "I'm just looking into some family history," Ethan replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "Ah, family history can be a tangled web," she said, her eyes glinting with understanding. "Would you like to see some of our archived newspapers? They might have more information about your family." Ethan nodded, his heart pounding with excitement. The librarian led him to a back room filled with rows of filing cabinets and stacks of old newspapers. She began pulling out the drawers, revealing brittle pages that crunched under his touch. Each article was a window into a world he had only glimpsed through his mother's stories, a world filled with wealth and privilege that had been denied to him after her death. As Ethan sifted through the articles, he stumbled upon one that caught his eye. The headline read, "Tragic Fall from Grace, the Hawthorne Family Scandal." His heart raced as he read about the family's rise to prominence and the subsequent scandal that had led to their downfall. The article detailed how his mother, Elizabeth, had been at the center of it all, estranged from her family after a betrayal that sent shockwaves through their social circles. "What did you find?" the librarian asked, noticing the change in his expression. "It's about my mother," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "She was part of a wealthy family, but something happened, something that caused her to leave them behind." The librarian nodded sympathetically. "It can be difficult to reconcile the past. Sometimes people choose to break away for their own reasons." Ethan could feel the weight of her words pressing down on him. He had always thought that his mother had distanced herself from her family for his sake, to protect him from the toxicity of wealth and expectation. But now he wondered if there was more to the story. If she had walked away from something grand, what had driven her to make such a choice? He continued to scan through the articles, each one revealing a new layer of the Hawthorne family history. There were mentions of lavish parties, high society events, and the kind of lifestyle that Ethan had only seen in movies. But with each account, he also uncovered whispers of betrayal, heartbreak, and a family torn apart by greed and ambition. It was as if he were piecing together a jigsaw puzzle, one that revealed a picture of opulence marred by shadows of despair. "Is there anyone left in the family?" he asked, his mind racing with thoughts of connection and belonging. The librarian paused, considering his question. There might be distant relatives, but they may not be easy to find. Have you tried searching through the family records? There could be mentions of other members in the archives. Ethan's heart raced at the prospect. No, I haven't. Can you show me how? Of course, she replied, leading him to a computer terminal. The screen flickered to life as she typed in a few commands, pulling up a database of family records. Ethan watched in awe as names scrolled across the screen, his own surname glaring back at him. Here we go, she said, pointing to a name. This might be someone worth reaching out to. Margaret Hawthorne. She was your mother's sister. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. Aunt Margaret. He had heard his mother mention her in passing, always with a tone of regret. Do you think she would want to talk to me? He asked, uncertainty creeping into his voice. It's hard to say, the librarian replied gently. Families can be complicated, especially after a scandal like this. But sometimes reaching out can lead to healing. Determination sparked within Ethan. He couldn't let fear hold him back any longer. With a shaky hand, he copied down the address and any other details he could find about his aunt. The thought of connecting with a family member filled him with a mix of hope and dread. What if Aunt Margaret rejected him? What if she held resentment toward his mother for leaving? As the sun began to set outside, casting a warm golden glow through the library windows, Ethan gathered his things and thanked the librarian for her help. He stepped outside, the cool evening air brushing against his skin, invigorating him. He had taken the first step in reclaiming his past, and no matter how painful it might be, he needed to know more about who he was and where he came from. That night, sitting at his small desk in his dimly lit room, Ethan penned a letter to Aunt Margaret. His heart raced as he wrote, pouring out his thoughts and feelings onto the page. He explained who he was, how he had come to learn about his family, and his desire to connect. He hoped that despite the distance and silence that had lingered between their families, she might still be open to hearing from him. Once he sealed the envelope and addressed it, Ethan placed it on his desk, a tangible representation of his hopes, a bridge to a family he had barely known but longed to understand. He felt a flicker of excitement mingled with anxiety about what the future might hold. In the days that followed, he found himself caught in a whirlwind of emotions. He returned to the library, diving deeper into his family's past with a fervor he hadn't felt in years. Each article he uncovered, each photograph he examined, was a reminder of the life he had been denied. But amid the glamour, he also felt the sting of betrayal and loss, as if the very legacy he sought to reclaim was tainted. Finally, the day came when he would send the letter. He stood outside the post office, his heart pounding in his chest. With each step toward the mailbox, he felt the weight of uncertainty pressing down on him. He took a deep breath, grasped the envelope tightly, and dropped it into the slot. As it disappeared, a mix of exhilaration and fear washed over him. Had he just taken a step toward healing, or had he opened a door that would lead to more heartbreak? Days turned into weeks, and Ethan found himself frequently checking the mailbox, hoping for a reply that would never come. Each empty visit chipped away at his hope, leaving him feeling more isolated than ever. But he refused to give up. He had taken the leap, and he needed to trust that the universe would respond in its own time. As he navigated through the challenges of school, dodging bullies and enduring the whispers of classmates, Ethan found solace in the knowledge he had gained about his family. He wasn't just a boy from a wealthy lineage. He was part of a story that spanned generations. The strength and resilience of those who had come before him fueled his determination to push through the darkness. One afternoon, as he sat in the cemetery by his mother's grave, he felt a sense of calm wash over him. He placed a few wildflowers he had picked along the way at her headstone, their vibrant colors contrasting with the somber gray of the stone. "I'm trying to find our family, Mom," he whispered, his voice trembling with emotion. "I want to understand why you left them and why you chose this life for me. I need your guidance." In that moment, he felt a connection to his mother, a warmth that enveloped him like a comforting embrace. It was as if she were there, urging him to keep searching for the truth, to seek out the connections that had been severed. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden hues across the sky, Ethan made a silent promise to himself. He would uncover the truth about his family, no matter where it led him. He would embrace the whispers of the past, even if they were shrouded in pain. He would not let fear dictate his future. He would uncover his legacy, even if it meant confronting the ghosts that lingered in the shadows. Ethan stood in front of the grand estate, his heart racing with a mix of excitement and trepidation. The towering columns and expansive gardens spoke of a world he had only glimpsed through the pages of dusty old newspapers. He felt small and insignificant against the backdrop of such opulence, a stark reminder of the life he had been thrust into after his mother's passing. Today was supposed to be the start of a new chapter, a chance to reconnect with a family he never knew. Yet the weight of uncertainty pressed heavily on his shoulders. As he approached the entrance, he noticed several elegantly dressed guests mingling under the vast awning. Their laughter echoed like a distant melody, but to Ethan it felt like a foreign sound, one he couldn't quite grasp. He hesitated at the door, his hand hovering over the ornate handle. What if they didn't accept him? What if they looked at him the same way his classmates did, with disdain and ridicule? Taking a deep breath, he pushed the door open and stepped inside. The interior of the estate was breathtaking, adorned with lavish chandeliers and intricate moldings. The walls were lined with portraits of stern-looking ancestors, their eyes seeming to follow him as he made his way deeper into the gathering. He could feel the curious gazes of the guests falling upon him, their whispers barely audible over the soft music playing in the background. Ethan's heart sank. He could almost hear them judging him, sizing him up as if he were an unwelcome intruder. "Can I help you?" a voice interrupted his thoughts. Ethan turned to see a woman approaching him, her expression a mix of curiosity and suspicion. She was impeccably dressed, her hair perfectly styled, and her gaze held a hint of recognition. "I'm Ethan," he stammered, feeling suddenly small. I'm here for the family gathering." "Ethan," she repeated, her brow furrowing slightly. "You're Elizabeth's son, aren't you? I'm Clara, your mother's sister." Relief washed over him, and for a fleeting moment, he felt a glimmer of hope. "Yes, I am. I received your invitation," he replied, his voice steadier now. Clara studied him for a moment, her expression softening. "It's been a long time since we've had any family gatherings. You must have a lot of questions." Ethan nodded, his mind racing with thoughts he had barely begun to process. "I do. I found out some things about our family, about my mother." She gestured for him to follow her to a quieter corner of the room, away from the prying eyes of the other guests. Once settled, Clara leaned closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "Your mother left a complicated legacy. There were reasons for her estrangement from our family, reasons that might be difficult to understand." Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. "I want to understand. I want to know why she chose to leave you all behind." Clara sighed, her gaze drifting toward the window where the garden stretched out in a tapestry of colors. "It wasn't her choice, Ethan. There were scandals, accusations, and a deep rift formed between her and our family. She wanted to protect you from it all." "Protect me?" Ethan echoed, confusion gnawing at him. "But what about the fortune? The trust fund? I heard whispers about it." "Yes, there is a trust fund," Clara admitted, her expression shifting to one of concern. "Your mother set it up to ensure your future was secure, but it's tied to conditions that you'll need to meet to access it." Ethan felt a mix of anger and yearning. Conditions? Why can't I just have what's rightfully mine? Why was I left in the dark? Clara reached out, placing a comforting hand on his arm. "You're not alone in this, Ethan. I know it feels that way now, but I want to help you navigate this. Our family has been through a lot, and I believe you deserve to know the truth." The moment was interrupted by a sudden flicker of the lights, causing Ethan to glance around nervously. The laughter and chatter of the guests dimmed, replaced by an unsettling silence. Just as quickly as it had come, the lights stabilized and the atmosphere returned to its previous state, though Ethan couldn't shake the sense of foreboding that had crept in. "Let's go outside. It's quieter there," Clara suggested, sensing his unease. They moved through the elegantly decorated hallways, past portraits that seemed to whisper stories of their own. The closer they got to the back of the estate, the more Ethan felt like an outsider. Yet Clara's presence provided a small comfort, a thread connecting him to the family he had longed for. Once outside, the garden was a lush expanse of greenery, punctuated by bursts of color from blooming flowers. The cool evening air felt refreshing against Ethan's flushed cheeks. Clara led him to a stone bench beneath a sprawling oak tree, its branches swaying gently in the breeze. "I remember your mother laughing under this very tree," Clara said softly, a hint of nostalgia in her voice. "She was always so full of life, even when things were difficult. We were close once, before everything fell apart." Ethan glanced up at her, searching for answers in her eyes. "What happened? Why did she leave?" Clara hesitated, her expression darkening. "It's a story filled with pain, but it's necessary for you to understand. Your mother was caught in a scandal involving our family's name, a name that was once revered, now tarnished. We had enemies, and they preyed on our weaknesses. Your mother made a choice to protect herself and ultimately you. But why didn't she ever tell me?" Ethan's voice trembled, the anger and sorrow mixing within him like a storm. "I had to find out on my own." Clara's gaze softened with empathy. "She wanted to shield you from the truth, Ethan. She thought it would be easier for you, but she loved you fiercely, even in her silence." As Ethan absorbed her words, he felt the weight of his mother's choices pressing down on him. "What about the trust fund? How do I access it?" "That's the tricky part," Clara replied, a hint of hesitation in her tone. "To claim it, you must demonstrate that you're ready to embrace your heritage, a heritage that comes with its own burdens." Ethan felt a wave of determination wash over him. "I want to know everything. I want to understand who I am." Just as Clara was about to respond, the lights flickered again, this time accompanied by a low rumble that resonated through the air. The ominous sound sent a chill down Ethan's spine, and he instinctively glanced back toward the house. Something felt off, as if the shadows were closing in around him. "Ethan, we should—" Clara began, but her words were cut off by a sudden commotion from inside the estate. Ethan's heart raced as he turned to see a figure stepping out through the grand doors, silhouetted against the light. "Who is that?" he asked, anxiety lacing his voice. Clara's expression shifted to one of alarm. "Stay here, Ethan. I'll find out." Before he could protest, Clara hurried back toward the entrance, leaving Ethan alone beneath the sprawling oak. He stood there, uncertainty gnawing at him, the weight of the gathering pressing upon his chest. In that moment, he realized that the family he had longed to connect with might be more complicated than he had ever imagined. As the figure drew closer, Ethan's breath caught in his throat. He could see the man's features more clearly now, his face a mirror of his own. The world around him faded, and all he could focus on was the undeniable resemblance. The same piercing eyes, the same determined jawline. "Ethan!" the man called, his voice smooth yet filled with an urgency that sent shivers down Ethan's spine. "I've finally found you." As Ethan stood in the grand ballroom of the estate, his heart raced with a mixture of anxiety and disbelief. The high ceilings loomed above him, draped with ornate chandeliers that cast a shimmering glow over the polished marble floors. He could hear laughter and chatter echoing around him, the sounds of a family he had never known but desperately wished to belong to. Yet amid the opulence, he felt a profound isolation, as if he were a ghost wandering through a place that was once his home but had become foreign. He turned his attention back to his mother's sister, Elise, who stood before him with an expression that mingled warmth and wariness. Her eyes, a striking shade of blue reminiscent of his mother's, held stories of sorrow and resilience. Ethan felt a flicker of hope as she spoke, her voice steady despite the tension that hung in the air. "Ethan," she began, her tone soothing, "there's so much to explain. Your mother, she loved you deeply. You must know that. The choices she made were to protect you from our family's dark legacy." Ethan shifted uncomfortably, his mind racing with questions. "What do you mean? What do I need to be protected from? I thought I was alone, that my mother left me with nothing but memories and a grave to visit." Elise sighed, her gaze drifting to the floor, as if the weight of their family history rested heavily upon her. "Your mother's estrangement from our family was not simply a matter of pride. It was a decision born from fear. There's a trust fund, a safety net she set up for you, but it's entangled in conditions that are meant to shield you from the shadows that haunt us." Ethan's heart began to race. A trust fund? Suddenly, the despair of his financial struggles felt like a distant memory. "What kind of conditions?" he pressed, sensing the urgency in his voice. "I need to know everything, please." Just as Elise was about to respond, the heavy double doors swung open with a creak and all eyes turned toward the entrance. A man stepped into the room, his presence commanding immediate attention. He was handsome in a rugged way, with dark hair that framed a chiseled face, but there was an air of wariness about him. The murmurs among the guests grew louder. A mix of surprise and confusion rippled through the crowd. "Is that?" someone whispered, and Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. "Ethan!" Elise's voice broke through the noise, her eyes widening in shock. "No, it can't be." The man's gaze locked onto Ethan, and for a moment time seemed to freeze. "Ethan," he said, his voice steady yet filled with emotion. I'm your father." The revelation hung in the air like a thunderclap, sending shockwaves through Ethan's mind. He felt the ground shift beneath his feet as his heart pounded in his chest. "My father?" he echoed, disbelief clouding his thoughts. "You left us. You abandoned us." "I know, and I'm sorry," the man replied, his expression a mix of regret and longing. "I didn't want to leave. I was forced to, for reasons I can't explain right now. But I've spent years searching for you, Ethan. I want to make things right." Ethan couldn't believe what he was hearing. The man before him, this stranger claiming to be his father, had shattered the fragile reality he had built around himself. "You think you can just waltz back into my life after all these years and expect me to trust you? You don't know anything about me." His voice trembled with anger and hurt. "Ethan, please," Elise interjected, her voice rising above the commotion. "This is not the time or place for this. We need to talk." "No!" Ethan shot back, his emotions boiling over. "You're all just going to keep lying to me. First it's about the trust fund, and now this? I don't even know if I can believe any of you." The tension in the room thickened, and murmurs spread like wildfire among the guests. Ethan turned away, feeling the weight of their stares, the judgment in their eyes. He needed air to escape the suffocating atmosphere that felt like it was closing in around him. He pushed past the crowd, ignoring the calls of his relatives. Outside, the cool night air hit him like a wave, washing over him and momentarily calming the storm inside. He leaned against the cold stone wall of the estate, his mind racing as he tried to process everything. His father, this man he had imagined in countless scenarios, was here, but it was a stranger standing before him, not the hero he had longed for. "Ethan!" Elise's voice broke through his thoughts as she stepped outside, her expression a mix of concern and determination. "You can't just run away from this. We need to talk about your future, about the trust fund." "Why should I trust anything you say?" He shot back, his voice laced with bitterness. "You're all part of this family that turned its back on my mother. You don't understand what I've been through." "I do understand," Elise insisted, her eyes earnest. "I watched your mother suffer after she left us, after she lost everything. She made sacrifices, Ethan, to keep you safe. The trust fund is real, but it's not just about money. It's a promise she made to protect you from our family's past." Ethan's anger faltered for a moment, replaced by a flicker of curiosity. "Protect me from what?" he asked, his voice quieter now, tinged with uncertainty. Elise hesitated, her gaze shifting toward the ground. "There are secrets, things that could put you in danger. Your mother believed that if you never knew about your lineage, you'd be safe. But now that you know, we need to make sure you're prepared for what's to come." The weight of her words settled heavily on Ethan's shoulders. He had always felt the burden of his past, the shadows of his family's history lurking in the corners of his mind. But could he trust this woman, this family that had kept him in the dark for so long? "I don't even know what I want," Ethan admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Everything feels so complicated. I just wanted to find a place where I belong." Elise stepped closer, her expression softening. "You can belong with us, Ethan, but you need to understand that it won't be easy. There are people who want to keep our family's past buried. You have to be strong." Ethan took a deep breath, his heart pounding. He felt like he was standing at a crossroads with one path leading back to the life of isolation he had known, and the other stretching into a future filled with uncertainty and potential danger. "What if I can't be strong?" he murmured. "You already are," Elise replied, her voice steady. "You've faced more than most at your age. Embrace your power, Ethan. You're not alone anymore. As the weight of her words settled within him, Ethan felt a spark of determination igniting in his chest. Perhaps it was time to confront the shadows of his past, to step into the light and uncover the truth about his family and himself. Okay, he finally said, his voice stronger now. I'll listen, but I need to know everything. No more secrets. Elise nodded, a look of relief washing over her face. Good. We'll figure this out together. You're part of this family, whether you realize it or not, and I promise we'll protect you. With those words hanging in the air, Ethan felt the first stirrings of hope. Perhaps he could redefine what family meant to him, even if it came with challenges he had yet to face. The night was far from over, and as he turned to rejoin the party, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. Whatever lay ahead, he would confront it head-on, no longer the boy lost in shadows, but a young man ready to uncover the truth.